The boardroom went silent. The billionaire slammed his hands on the table, furious, helpless. Papers scattered, coffee cups trembled. His mother, sitting quietly beside him, moved her hands rapidly, trying to speak. But no one understood. Her. Not even her own son. The room was filled with confusion, awkward glances, and quiet whispers. Cameras flashed. Journalists recorded every second of his humiliation. And then, from the back of the room, a small voice broke the silence. A 10-year-old girl wearing a faded dress and holding a cleaning rag stepped forward and said, softly, I can understand her. Everyone froze. The billionaire turned, disbelief in his eyes. The girl took a deep breath, looked at his mother, and began to translate her signs. What happened next left the entire boardroom in tears. The glass walls of Ward Enterprises headquarters reflected the morning sun like mirrors of pride. Inside, the most powerful men and women of the city gathered around a long marble conference table, their designer suits, sleek laptops, and silent competition filling the air. At the head of the table sat Ethan Ward, the 35-year-old billionaire CEO, sharp, handsome, and feared. His every word could raise or crash a fortune. Today wasn't just another meeting. It was the meeting, the unveiling of his company's biggest charity venture yet. Project Hope, a billion-dollar educational program that promised to change lives. Cameras rolled, journalists waited, investors whispered in anticipation. But amidst all the power and glamour, one presence stood out. A fragile, gentle woman sitting quietly beside Ethan. Eleanor Ward, his mother. Her silver, hair-framed a face lined with grace and silence. She was deaf, had been since childhood. But her eyes carried oceans of emotion. Everyone in the room respected her presence, though few truly understood it. Ethan often brought her to important meetings, not for consultation, but as a symbol, a reminder of humility and compassion. But today, that symbol was about to speak. As the presentations began, the air buzzed with corporate pride. Graphs flashed, applause erupted. Ethan smiled, confident, polished, untouchable. But Eleanor shifted in her seat, watching the slides closely. Her fingers began to move. Slow at first, then faster. She was signing something urgently. Ethan's smile faded. He glanced at her, confused. "Mom, not now," he whispered under his breath. But Eleanor's gestures grew stronger, her hands pleading, expressive, desperate to convey a message. The executives exchanged awkward looks. A few whispered. Cameras caught every movement. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Someone stop recording," he snapped. "Please." But Eleanor didn't stop. Her hands told a story no one could hear. She pointed at the presentation, then at Ethan, then formed shapes with her fingers. Shapes only a few could understand. To others, it looked like a scene of chaos. To Ethan, it looked like a public embarrassment. He stood abruptly, slamming his hands on the table. "That's enough! She's not well! Let's continue!" His voice echoed through the boardroom, slicing the silence in half. But then a small sound, soft, almost trembling, came from near the back of the room. A cleaner, holding a mop, froze as her little daughter peeked from behind her leg. The girl, thin, brown-skinned, no older than 10, looked directly at Eleanor, eyes wide with recognition. "She's not angry," the girl said softly. "She's saying something important." Every head turned. Ethan frowned. "What did you say?" The girl hesitated, stepping forward. "I can understand her. She's using sign language." Gasps filled the room. The billionaire blinked in disbelief. "You? You can understand her?" The girl nodded shyly. "Yes, sir. My brother can't hear. I talk to him the same way." Eleanor's face lit up for the first time that morning. She smiled, a soft, tearful smile of recognition. Her hands moved again, slowly this time, forming signs the little girl understood perfectly. "She's saying," the girl began, looking at Ethan, "you've forgotten what this project was truly meant for." And just like that, the mighty boardroom fell silent again. The noise of power faded. The cameras stopped clicking. Because in that moment, a poor little girl had become the only voice the billionaire's mother had ever truly needed. The silence in the boardroom felt heavy, the kind that makes people forget to breathe. Executives who once dominated every discussion now sat frozen, watching the little girl standing beside the billionaire's deaf mother. Ethan Ward, the billionaire CEO, looked at the child with disbelief. Her tiny hands fidgeted nervously, but her eyes were steady, unafraid. "What did you just say?" Ethan asked softly, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. "She said," the girl repeated slowly, "you've forgotten what this project was truly meant for." A murmur spread across the room like a wave. The journalists exchanged glances. The investors whispered. The PR head reached for her phone. This was not the script they had prepared for today. Eleanor, the mother, looked at the girl with tender eyes, eyes that had been ignored all morning. Her fingers began moving again, graceful yet full of emotion. The girl, Amara, focused carefully, reading every gesture, every flick of the wrist. "She's saying," Amara translated hesitantly, "that she didn't want to come here today. She knew no one would listen. But she wanted to see her son and remind him what hope really means." Ethan's throat tightened. He took a small step forward, staring at his mother. "Hope? Mom? What are you—" Eleanor interrupted with her hands again, moving faster now. Amara's voice grew firmer, clearer. "She says this project isn't about money or investors or fancy headlines. It's about children who can't afford to dream. She's saying they don't need a billionaire's photo on a billboard. They need real help. A pin could have dropped, and everyone would have heard it." The head of finance looked down in shame. The investors' faces hardened. Even the camera crew seemed hesitant to continue recording. Ethan swallowed hard. You're telling me my mother said all that?" Amara nodded. "Yes, sir. She also says she's proud of you, but afraid. Afraid that success made you forget the boy who used to fix toys for deaf kids in your old neighborhood." The words hit him like thunder. His knees weakened. He remembered. The boy with dirt on his hands, repairing broken radios and using sign language to cheer up his neighbor's deaf son. That boy had vanished somewhere along the way. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Her fingers moved slowly, this time. Gentle, trembling. Amara whispered softly, "She says she misses that boy." Ethan turned away, his jaw tight, eyes glistening. He didn't want anyone to see the tears forming. Amara's mother, the cleaner, stepped forward, nervously. "I'm sorry, sir. She didn't mean to interrupt. I told her to stay outside." Ethan raised his hand slightly. "No, don't stop her." He looked down at Amara. "You're not in trouble. In fact, you just did something no one in this room could do." A small, proud smile appeared on Amara's face. She turned back to Eleanor, and together, they began signing again, the little girl's hands mirroring the woman's, as if two hearts finally spoke the same language. In that moment, it wasn't a board meeting anymore. It was something sacred, a bridge between silence and understanding, and for the first time in years, the billionaire truly listened. Ethan stood still, his palms pressed against the cold surface of the conference table. Around him, the grand boardroom, once filled with confidence and chatter, had turned into a place of silent confession. Every gaze was fixed on the little girl, Amara, and the elderly woman whose silent words now carried more weight than all the corporate speeches combined. Eleanor's hands moved again, slow, deliberate, each motion filled with meaning. Amara focused deeply, her voice trembling but firm as she translated. "She says the project's purpose has been lost," Amara began softly. "She says the people in this room talk about helping the poor, but none of you have ever sat in their homes or felt their hunger." The words hit like lightning. Several executives shifted in discomfort. The PR manager tried to force a smile, but it faded quickly. Amara continued. "She says this plan, this Project Hope, is just a show, a performance for cameras. The real children who need help, they won't even be reached." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He turned toward the large digital screen where colorful graphs and profit estimates flashed proudly. All meaningless now. "She says," Amara went on, "when your father was alive, both of you dreamed of giving voice to those who had none, but now you're surrounded by people who use charity for headlines." Ethan lowered his head. His mother's hands trembled. Amara paused, her eyes filling with empathy. Then she spoke again, softer this time. "She says she's not angry at you. She knows your heart is good, but lost. She wants to remind you that true power isn't in wealth. It's in kindness." The room was utterly still. Even the air felt heavy with guilt and awakening. Ethan walked closer to his mother. For the first time, he didn't see her as the fragile woman he protected. He saw her as the mirror of everything he had forgotten. Her eyes met his, kind, sad, forgiving. He turned to Amara. "Ask her what she wants me to do," he whispered. Eleanor smiled faintly, her hands moving slowly, not to command, but to bless. Amara looked up and said, "She says don't fix your company, fix the world you promised to help." And just like that, the billionaire who thought he had everything realized how truly poor he had become. Poor in humanity, poor in heart. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. His mind felt like a storm, guilt, memories, and emotions crashing inside him all at once. The powerful billionaire who once commanded boardrooms and controlled empires now stood silently before a poor little girl and his aging mother, realizing they held a truth no amount of money could buy. The executives sat frozen, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. Even the cameras had stopped rolling. Ethan finally broke the silence, his voice low but trembling. How do you understand her so well?" he asked, looking at Amara. Amara blinked shyly. "My little brother was born deaf," she said. "We didn't have money for special schools, so I learned sign language from books. I wanted him to feel heard." Ethan's eyes softened. He glanced at her small hands, the same hands that moments ago had carried a mop, now translating messages that changed lives. He felt a sting of shame. This girl had grown up in the kind of world his company was supposed to help, yet she was the one showing him what compassion truly meant. Eleanor watched them both, tears glimmering in her eyes. She signed something, slowly, tenderly. Amara looked at Ethan and said, "She says she's proud of you. For listening, finally." Those words broke him. Ethan stepped back, rubbing his eyes. "I've spent years talking about making change," he said quietly. "But maybe I've never truly listened to the people who needed it most." One of the executives cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, the press is still outside. We could cancel the press conference," Ethan interrupted firmly. "This meeting isn't for them anymore." He turned back to Amara and her mother. "You both came here to clean our mess," he said softly. "But today, you cleaned something much bigger. My conscience." Amara lowered her gaze, blushing. "I just wanted to help her speak," she murmured. "And you did," Ethan said, smiling faintly. You spoke louder than all of us combined." He looked around the room at the men and women who had spent the morning chasing numbers and reputation. "You all heard her," he said, voice rising with emotion. "This project will change. No more fake charity. No more headlines without heart." He turned to the big digital screen behind him and pointed at the glowing words, Project Hope. "From today," he said, "Project Hope will be rebuilt, not for publicity, not for investors, but for children like Amara, her brother, and every kid who dreams despite silence." The room erupted in soft applause, hesitant at first, then sincere. Even the executives who once looked at Eleanor as a mere guest now looked at her with respect. Ethan walked to his mother's side, kneeling beside her chair. "I'm sorry," he signed slowly, his movements awkward but heartfelt. Her eyes widened, then softened with love. She reached out, touching his face gently. Amara smiled. "She says she forgives you." The billionaire closed his eyes, a tear rolling down his cheek. "Thank you," he whispered. He turned back to Amara. "Tell me one thing," he said. "If you could change one thing in this world, what would it be?" Amara thought for a moment, then said quietly, "I'd make sure every child, deaf or poor, is heard, even if they can't speak." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." And in that instant, the distance between wealth and poverty vanished, replaced by something far greater, understanding. The girl who had come to clean a floor had instead cleaned a heart clouded by pride. And the billionaire, who once believed power was in money, now saw that the greatest power of all was compassion. 3 weeks later, the world knew their story. Billionaire's deaf mother and poor girl inspire global education reform. The headline spread across every major network, every social platform, every heart that still believed in humanity. The story of Ethan Ward, his mother Eleanor, and the little girl Amara became a symbol of something bigger, the reminder that compassion doesn't need wealth to speak loudly. Inside Ward Enterprises, everything had changed. The sleek glass boardroom now displayed new words etched on its wall. Hope is not a project, it's a promise. Ethan kept his promise. He launched the Eleanor Foundation for Children with Disabilities and Deaf Education, ensuring sign language was taught freely in schools, and that every child, no matter their background, had access to real education. Amara became the face of the foundation, not because of pity, but because of power. Her innocence and courage had transformed an empire. She stood on a grand stage beside Ethan and Eleanor as cameras flashed, but this time the light didn't blind anyone. It illuminated them. Ethan stepped to the podium, his voice steady, full of humility. "Today," he said, "we celebrate, not money, not power, but understanding. Because the greatest voices in this world often come from the ones we refuse to hear." He paused, turning toward Amara and his mother. One spoke through silence, the other through courage. Together, they reminded me what my billions never could, that true leadership means listening. Applause filled the hall. Some executives wiped tears. Even journalists put their cameras down to clap with their hearts instead of their hands. After the ceremony, Eleanor sat in her wheelchair, smiling at the sight of Amara talking to children on the stage. She looked up at Ethan, signing slowly. Amara turned and translated with a warm smile. "She says she's proud of you, and that she can finally rest easy, knowing her voice will never be forgotten." Ethan knelt beside his mother, his fingers trembling as he replied in sign language for the first time, "I love you." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but peace. As the lights dimmed and the crowd applauded, Amara stood in the center, holding both their hands, a bridge between two worlds. The camera zoomed in, capturing the moment forever. The billionaire, the mother, and the little girl who taught them that silence isn't weakness. It's a language of love, waiting to be understood. The screen faded to black with a single line. Sometimes the smallest voice changes the loudest world. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists and that even the quietest souls can change everything. Like, comment, "I hear you," and subscribe for more stories that awaken your heart.